So, check this out, people. How much money do you need to retire in the Philippines? Now, that all depends on how much money you make. And I'm not talking about people who are coming to the Philippines on vacation, but to those who want to live, to retire in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, whether Vietnam, Thailand. Today, I want to talk about the Philippines, right? Because that's where I'm retired. And I know firsthand what is required, for me at least, to thrive here, to live here, and how much money I need to spend in order to be successful and to live a good life here in the Philippines, right? First of all, I've watched videos where people say you can live in the Philippines for about $900 a month, right? If you can live in the US with $900 a month, when the price of eggs is $8, when the price of bread is $3, where a gallon of milk costs about $6, and you can afford to live there with $900 a month, then you could definitely afford to live in the Philippines with $900 a month, where your rent could be anywhere from $100 to $200 a month. In the city and in a province, anywhere from $40 to $60 a month. Now, when I say $40 to $60 a month, I don't mean some hole in the wall. I mean a beautiful home with a yard, somewhere in a nice island like the island of Mindoro, Oriental Mindoro, where you can find a beautiful home to rent for about $40 to $60 a month. And if you're like me and you're retired, because I retired at age 43, and I got tired of struggling, I got tired of having to overpay for groceries, right? And I've traveled to the Philippines plenty of times, many times before. And while here, I've been able to live with about $500. While on vacation, of course, I had more money than that. But I found that each time I traveled here, I didn't have to spend more than about $500 a month for myself and for my friends to do the things that I enjoy doing, like bar hopping. I don't drink, by the way, but my friends do. Restaurant hopping, island hopping. I was able to do all of these things and enjoy life to the fullest, okay? Stay in fancy hotels, stay in beautiful condos, Airbnbs, and still not spend more than about $500 a month, okay? Now, I was on vacation, and each time I traveled here on vacation, I didn't spend that much money. And so, once my daughter grew up and she was old enough to have her own family and live on her own with her family, I decided to come to the Philippines permanently and to stay, right? And so, once here, permanently, I was able to secure an apartment, right? And pay bills just like I do back home, full time, right? Because before I wasn't paying bills, I was just staying with friends. And now that I'm paying bills, I'm paying $220 a month for a 3-bedroom house, 3-story house with 3 bathrooms, 1 bathroom on each floor, right? I paid the electricity, the water, and I still have money left over to fly to Vietnam, to fly to Thailand, to stay at fancy hotels, to go out and eat every day, and to do the things that I enjoy doing. because you're not going to find a house anywhere in the US for $200 a month. You're not going to find an apartment for $200 a month. You're not going to find a hole in the wall in the US for $200 a month. And I found a 3-story house with 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms for $220 a month. And my last apartment in Manila was less than $200 a month. And if I take a bus to Oriental Mindoro, which is only a bus ride away from Manila, it's about an 8-hour, 10-hour bus ride. It's a beautiful island, a beautiful place to visit. You can rent a full house there, beautiful, with a yard, an amazing place, for about $60 a month. And if you rent an apartment there, it'll cost you about $40 a month. And I'm not talking about a hole in the wall. I'm not talking about a dump in a slum. I'm talking about a beautiful place in a beautiful province, in a beautiful town like Pola. And so when you watch videos, right? Because I've watched videos where people say you can't live in the Philippines with $900 a month. You can't live in the Philippines with $1,000 a month. You can't live in the Philippines with $2,000 a month, because if you do, you're not going to live like a king. That's ridiculous. If you cannot live in the Philippines with $2,000 a month, then you're doing something wrong. If you can't do it with $1,900 a month, you're doing something wrong. Because if you're surviving with that, back home in the US, surviving, not living, you could definitely live with that here in the Philippines. Because if I do the math, just this month alone, paying my rent in my 3-story house with 3 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms, paying the electricity, the water, the internet, and then on top of that, paying my girlfriend's mortgage in the other house, I've spent about $600 just for this month. Now imagine if I'm not paying for my girlfriend's mortgage in the other house. I still have plenty of money left over, more money than I already have, left over to do the things that I want to do. Just think about that. Where in America can you pay a mortgage and rent a house, pay the bills, and still have money to do the things you want to do? Because for all of these things, you're only paying about $600 a month. Where in America can you find that? And you're telling me that if you make $1,000 a month in retirement, that you can't succeed here in the Philippines? That's ridiculous. If you can't, you're doing something wrong. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I don't hang out. The things that I do, that I enjoy doing, is I enjoy being out for dinner. I enjoy eating out, visiting nice restaurants, staying at a nice Airbnb or at a nice condo, where I spend about $40 for the condo. And I'm not talking about some garbage condo. I'm talking about a condo that if you were renting it back home, it'll cost you about $400 a night. And here it costs me $40 a night. Just compare that. So if you can't make it here with $1,000 a month, you're doing something wrong. Now, if you like to party, if you like to drink, if you like to hang out, if you like picking a prostitute, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it, just like you're not going to make it anywhere, including the US. When you come to a place like this, you have to appreciate the nature, the things that are around you, the things that you cannot do back home, the things that are going to cost you a big amount of money just to enjoy, like going to the beach, where here it'll cost you nothing but the train ride, the bus ride to get there. And if you want to spend the night at a beautiful hotel, it'll cost you about $40. And that's for everybody. That's for about 5 people. Just think about that. And so, if you want to live here in the Philippines, and your budget is about $1,000 a month, you could definitely make it. You can definitely do it. But again, if you're here to party, you're not here to live, you're here to do other things, then you're not going to thrive. You're not going to thrive. It doesn't matter where you go. But if you're a serious person who understands that your responsibilities are to pay the bills, to take care of home first, to pay your bills, to pay your rent, and then whatever you have left, then you can do whatever you want, because then you have a home to go to afterwards. And with about, I don't know, $10 a day, you can feed yourself, because a full meal here in the Philippines costs you about $3. A cup of coffee and a bread, an egg sandwich for breakfast will cost you less than $1. Less than $1 for breakfast. Hell, with about $20, you can eat for about a week. Especially if you live by yourself. You can do so much if you're by yourself. Now, if you have a family, then $1,000 may not cut it. Unless you live in a province, like Pola, Oriental Mindoro, where you're paying $60 a month for rent in a beautiful home. So it is possible. It just depends on your lifestyle, where you want to live. Some people don't like living in a province because they like the city life. I don't care where I live as long as I'm comfortable in the home I'm staying. A home that'll keep me out of the rain, out of the heat, out of the sun, because that's where I sleep. That's not where I live. I sleep in my house, but my life isn't here. My life is outside of home. But because I'm an adult and I'm responsible, I need to make sure that I have a home to come home to. And so my priority is to make sure that while I'm here in the Philippines, just like back home, I have a place that I keep responsibly, that I pay my rent on time, and that I pay my bills on time. So if anything goes wrong outside of my home, it doesn't matter, because I got a home to come to. And so you could definitely make it in the Philippines with $1,000 a month, if that's what you're surviving with back home in the US. But if you're going to come to drink, to be irresponsible, just like anywhere else, you're not going to make it. Because I hear stories like that all the time. You do not want to be stranded in the Philippines without money, without friends, without support. You need a support system here. I have my family back home, my brothers and sisters, my children, I have my friends. So if anything goes wrong here, I can always pick up the phone and ask them for help. But more importantly, I have a support system here in the Philippines, which you definitely need. Because if you don't have a local to go out with and to be the face that represents you when you want to rent a house, an apartment, or anything, you will be taken advantage of. And people will overcharge you because they think that every American, every European, every foreigner is rich. But outside of that, if you're retired and you're struggling in the US and you're finding it hard to pay your bills, your rent, especially, then this is a place where you can definitely live like a king. Definitely. And then you have Thailand and Vietnam just a few hours away, and it'll cost you about $120 round trip from the Philippines, the last time I checked. And so there are places, for example, that are expensive here, just like there are places that are not so expensive. If you decide to stay in a city like BGC, for example, you can pay up to $400 to $600 a month in rent for a studio condo or a one-bedroom condo, which to me doesn't make sense, because even if you don't like to live in a province or you're a city person, I would still recommend living in a province, because if you're a person like me who likes to do things outside of home, home is just where I sleep. It's not where I live. Or at least it's not where I have my life. My life is outside of my home because I enjoy life outside of my home. I want to experience the Philippines and life outside of where I live. And the city is only an hour and a half away from the province that I live in. And so if I enjoy the city life, I can always get on a bus for less than $1, ride into the city, hang out, do the things that I enjoy doing, and get back on that bus and come home to a quiet province where I don't have to deal with the hustle and bustle, the noise, and all the nonsense that goes on in the city, dealing with the traffic especially. And there's nothing you're going to miss in a province that you're going to miss in a city. Nothing at all. Because everything they have in the city, they have in the provinces. Everything. The difference is that in a province, things may close a little earlier. And if you're a night person, get on a bus, ride to the city, and enjoy the city. And then come right back on the bus. Buses run here 24 hours a day. It's no different than living in New York City here in the Philippines, especially if you're in the Metro Manila area. And so if you're struggling back home, and if you're retired and you're considering retiring somewhere else, or if you're just tired of struggling back home in the US, consider traveling to a place where the American dollar is worth 50 times or more than the Filipino peso, where a dozen eggs will cost you about $1.20, where a 2-liter Coke will cost you about, I don't know, 50 cents. A cup of coffee, an egg sandwich in the morning costs you less than $1. You can live and eat for a whole week with about $20. And so when you compare what you pay in a mortgage back home, in rent back home, you don't even have to own land or property in this country to be comfortable. You can simply rent and live your life without having to stress over paying your bills, whether or not you got money left over to eat until your next pay, because it is so inexpensive to live here. And so you have these cities, for example, like Manila, where I lived, and you have BGC, for example. And if you compare the rent in BGC to the province where I pay rent, you can, if you can afford it, which if you can afford it back home in the US, you can afford it here in BGC in the Philippines. Because it'll cost you about $600 a month for a beautiful condo in the city. But if I'm going to spend that much money, knowing the life that I can live in this country, compared to spending $200 a month in and own bigger property, right? Because if you're going to spend $600 for a condo a month in BGC or somewhere in Manila for a small studio apartment or 1-bedroom apartment, to me that don't make no sense. Because you're going to end up spending more a month on bills, electricity and water and everything else. In a province, you can own a larger home. 3-story home, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, $200 a month. All the space you need. Even if it's for you alone, you're paying less than you would if you stayed in a city that, again, you can simply travel to from the province. I'm only an hour and a half away from Manila. And so if you look at the way life is back home in the US, how people are struggling. It doesn't make any sense to me that I come to a place like this, a place that we call a third world country, right? And this third world country is on its way to becoming a second world country. This country is thriving. This country is going places. Every day, this country is becoming more and more beautiful with their restructuring. The people are amazing. I mean, it's so easy to live here. If you cannot live in this country, in the Philippines, with $1,000 retirement, then you're doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong. Because I pay the rent here. I pay the mortgage for my girlfriend's house. I pay the bills here. And between the rent in my 3-bedroom house, 3-story, 3-bathroom that I rent, and paying the water, the electricity, the internet, and then paying for my girlfriend's mortgage, it costs me less than $600 a month. Just think about that. Think about that. Here, for what you pay back home in the US, for a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City, for example, in Texas, anywhere, you can rent 7 to 10 houses for what you rent back home in the US. And you can have a house on any province you want. In 7 different provinces, you can have a different house for what you pay back home in the US. So if you can't make it here, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong. Come to the Philippines, men especially, because the women here are amazing. They treat you well. They're very feminine. They cook, they clean, they tend to you, they cater to you. Something that's missing back home in the US with women. And so if you want to experience life and live like a king, this is the place to retire. Consider the Philippines. Visit one time. Just come back, come here for about a month. Couple of weeks ain't gonna cut it. Come here for about a month. Travel, visit. You'll be able to do that with about $500. It won't cost you more than $500. As long as you have a place to stay. I stayed in the Philippines when I first came here, right? I stayed in Bicol, Naga City, which is a province 10 hours, 12 hours from Manila. After flying here some 19, 20 hours, landing here, spending the night in Manila at a hotel or a condo, beautiful condo that cost me less than $40 with a swimming pool, AC, the whole nine. I then got on a bus to Bicol, Naga City, 10, 12-hour ride, where I stayed at a hotel that included AC, because it's hot here, and not every room offers AC. In some hotels you have an option, right? You can choose a fan, no AC, no fan, or AC, or a fan, however you want. So I stayed at a hotel in Naga City where I had AC, HBO, Cinemax. I had Wi-Fi, all included, and I was paying about $7 a night. $7 a night. Instead of renting a house or renting an apartment, I simply lived in the hotel. It was costing me less than $220 a month to live at the hotel. I didn't see the point in me renting an apartment, because if I rented an apartment, I would have to have the cable installed, have the internet installed, and all of that was already included in my room. That's how cheap it was to live. Now I'm talking about 2017. I don't know what it's like now, if the rates are the same. I doubt it. I'm sure it's more. It costs more now. But my point is that when you compare these prices to the prices back home in the US, it is a big difference. And if you're retired and if you're struggling back home, you can come to the Philippines and you can thrive. As long as you're not coming here to party, to pick up prostitutes, to hang out at the bars every night, to drink, to smoke, to live like you're 19 years old and you're a grown man in your 40s, then as long as you're not here for that, you are going to succeed. The first thing you have to do when you get here, like what I did, is make sure I had a place to come to, an apartment, a room, a house, something, anything that I was responsible for, that I knew I can go to when I needed to sleep, when I needed to stay out of the heat, the rain, a place to bathe. It doesn't have to be fancy. I don't have to live in a fancy condo where I'm paying some $400, $600 a month, when I can live in a province for a third of that, a quarter of that. Because depending on where you live, you can pay some $40 to $60 a month in rent, like you can in Oriental Mindoro, a beautiful place where you live like a king. Hell, if I could move to Bola in the island of Mindoro, that's where I'd be right now. I love that place. But this is where my girlfriend's job is, in the Metro Manila area. And because of that, this is where we live. Plus she has kids, so we need more room. But I take care of all the bills. I take care of everything. I make sure she's happy because she makes sure I'm happy. And if you have a support system, you're going to thrive easily. Easily. There's no reason why any American who retires in this country, in the Philippines, that once he's paid his rent, once he's paid his electricity, his water, his internet, that he shouldn't have at least $500 for the month to hold him over, just $500 for him to do whatever he wants to do. And there's no reason for you to spend more than $100 a week here on nothing. No reason. Because if you go out every day and you eat out every day, you're not going to spend $100 a week if you live by yourself. I mean, I'm living with my girlfriend and her kids, and I don't spend $100 a week. And if I do, it's because I like to do other things. I like to stay in hotels. I like to stay in Airbnbs, in condos. I like to do things. I like to enjoy my life. And so I rent a place where I can be comfortable in, but I do it so that I'm not overspending on bills and rent. Because I can overspend if I live in BGC, for example, and pay $500, $600 a month. Or I can live in a province where I pay $200 a month or less in a beautiful home, a house with plenty of space, where I'm paying less bills and have more money in my pocket to do the things that I enjoy doing. And because I don't go to the bars, I don't go to the clubs, I don't party, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I have plenty of money in my pocket to do the things that I enjoy, which I do regularly. At least once or twice a month, I leave, I do something, I go somewhere. I have something new to talk about, a new experience. So if you compare life back home in the US, if you compare the rent back home in the US, it's ridiculous for what you pay over there for a one-bedroom house or apartment. You can own 7 to 10 houses here in the Philippines. And if you want to stay in a condo, you pay about $600 a month. And if you stay somewhere in a regular home, house, or apartment in a province, you can pay between $40 to $60 or $100 to $200. And either way, you're going to live good. Because these aren't holes in the walls. These aren't slums. So, especially men who are tired of struggling and are bored and are just sitting at home with nothing to do, travel to the Philippines. Research it. Go on YouTube and search and get opinions on what people are saying about the Philippines. And if you ever decide to travel, always make sure first you have your passport. And know that if you travel here, it is a 30-day visa for the first visit. So you have to make sure that your round-trip ticket is within 30 days. No more, because if you do get a round-trip ticket that's, for example, 32 or 33 days, they may not allow you to fly because you need a round-trip ticket within 30 days to fly back home to the US. And so if that is your first time, just know that. And so travel here, experience it for yourself, see for yourself, and if this is a place that you enjoy, which I think you will, the people are great, they're amazing, the women are amazing, the food is amazing, the country is beautiful. You're going to see areas that are slums, there's no doubt about that. But that doesn't change the joy that you see in people's faces, especially the children. And it doesn't change the atmosphere, the way people engage with you, the way people stare at you because they know you're not like them. You look different. People are very engaging, very joyful, very easy to get along with. And so, if you come here, you will see that for yourself. I believe that if you make at least $1,000 a month, and I'm telling you this from experience, you can live here easily, because if you can survive back home, you can live here in the Philippines with $1,000 a month. You can. So, visit the Philippines, get your passport first, get yourself together, make sure you have everything in order, do the research, see for yourself, and then come here and give it a chance. And you'll understand what it is I'm talking about.